Hey everyone, welcome to the second session of the Intellectual Month workshops. Today we're talking about resource libraries and resource library optimization. So what are resources and what are resource libraries? Let me just get into that, the concept of resource libraries. Now, resources are, the tools you use, or mostly what we're referring to in the Intellectual Month is books, courses, videos, PDFs, notes, insights, all these are resources. And resource libraries are where we store these resources, right? Like you put a book in a library, you have these resources and they are somewhere, they are placed somewhere. But having them just in any place, is not helpful. So today what we're talking about is why we need to organize and optimize our resource libraries. So when we're gathering these resources, they are actually helpful for us. So we can access them and use them when we need them. Because most of the time, what we do is we gather all these resources, but we never look at them. We never reference them because we also forget where we put them, especially if we have multiple apps. And then I don't know about you, but I tend to always Google something new. Like, hey, I want to cook a new recipe. I have a bunch of recipes stored in a million places, but let me just go to Google or YouTube or Pinterest, just keep gathering these resources. So what we're going to talk about today is not like, okay, let's dive in and just start organizing. So we can't do that. We need to start from the beginning, which is the most important part that I call guidelines, principles, systems. If you don't build your resource library on those, then you're going to end up with the mess that you already have, or I already have, which is a bunch of pins, a lot of collections in Instagram and YouTube playlists, but we don't use any of them. So first, let's differentiate also between the tools we use and the resources. As I said at the beginning, the resources are the books, the content, the video, your notes, courses, quotes, whatever you gather in terms of information. These are the content. The tools are basically the tools you use to gather these, or the tools in which you gather them, like what becomes the library. So these can be, maybe you use Remarkable for note-taking, or a notebook, or tools like Notion and Coda, and any different tools you use where you store your information. So one example of a chaotic resource library we probably all have is our phone's camera roll or photo album. This is where we're not just taking selfies and pictures, we're also storing screenshots. We're like, oh, I like that dress. You snap a shot of that, you take a picture of it. You see something you want to show someone, you take a picture of it. And then what happens? Do you do something with those, or they end up on your phone? And then it becomes this massive clutter. Now you have this additional work of put it on my to-do list to clean up my phone and store the pictures, sort them out. You never do. Then what happens? You run out of storage and you just dump them exactly as is on your computer until it becomes a problem as well there. So this is why we need systems and principles. For example, with the photos example, it applies to everything. Okay, the phone photos example. I have a principle, and the reason I call them principles is because it's more powerful when you say principle instead of rule. I kind of like, hey, it's my principle. It's like my personality, my character is like, it impacts that. So one of my principles is, before I'm taking a picture or any screenshot or anything on my phone, like, why am I doing this? First thing, like, why do I need this screenshot? Why do I need this picture? Like, yay, yeah, beautiful sunset. Why do I need that picture? Like, for how long? Do I just want to post it on Instagram right now? Great, I do it, post it, delete it immediately. It takes me a few seconds. But if I don't do it then it becomes a huge task in the future. The same with any screenshots. Like, I'm taking this screenshot to send it somewhere. For example, if it's for work for me, I see, let's say, something that inspires me about a project I'm working on. I immediately send it via email to my work email, and I'm done with it. It's deleted immediately. So if it serves its purpose, don't keep it in your camera roll, right? So any type of information is the same. If you capture any information, why do you need it? A lot of times, we think of like, hey, I need a piece of paper. I need to write this down. It's like a number, someone's number or someone's name, and I need to share it with someone else immediately, right? We don't mind if we write it on a sticky note and then tear it and put it away. But if we keep all this temporary information along with important information in the same place, then that's where the overwhelm happens. So another example from real life: you don't put your passport and birth certificate along with newsletters, right? You keep those important documents in a separate place, and then you have this tray or mailbox, let's say, for newsletters. It means if you end up with 100 newsletters, you can just dump them without taking a single look at them. In 1 second, you just dump them. But if you put important documents and non-important together, then you can't do that, right? Then every time you look at that pile, it becomes a frustration because I need to sort these. It's the same with any kind of books, courses, resources, especially because now information is free. We tend to save a lot. And the first rule of saving or creating a resource library is be an essentialist. Ask, why do I need this? Do I need this? And for what? And I like that as life bookers, we have a principle, or we have like a tool we can use to identify if we need this resource or not. Because 1, you have your sacred choices. 2, you have your goals. So any resource that's not going to help you improve your sacred choices or support your goals, you'll ask, like, why do I need this? It might be something to do with quality of life. Maybe it's something fun. And we go back to a concept I introduced last week, which is areas of interest. Great. So this is where I want to revisit those concepts, because these are my principles of what content I store or I save or I choose to keep. The areas of commitment we mentioned last week. Areas of commitment are your lifebook categories, right? And for areas of commitment, the intellectual part of it or the resource part of it, mostly, let's say, is the tools or content you need for your sacred choices. So let's take health and fitness. If you want to, let's say, cook healthy meals, what is a resource for that? A recipe book, right? You want to create your own recipe book. So that's the first thing. Clarity. Do I want to have specific recipes that I keep using and that's it? Or do I want to jump on Google and waste a lot of time thinking of what I'm going to cook instead of cooking and eating healthy? This is where the power of having your own resource library comes in, right? So for that, for the meal plan specifically, you can create a resource. You can, whatever it is, you can print them out, put them in binders. I used to do that a long time ago. And then you're like, okay, I'm not even going to use a device so I don't get distracted. This is my cookbook. That's it. Or you can use any tool, like there's a million of them out there. The tool doesn't matter as long as the principle is. So you're like, okay, I don't eat dairy. I don't save recipes with dairy. I'm not going to say, oh, I can adapt them. I can do. There are so many out there without dairy. Just go for those. Like I'm telling you about my principles. I'm not saying adopt them. Okay. I'm just giving you examples so you can think of your own principles. Let's say you're doing keto. You want keto recipes. Fine. Gather those. Like, be specific. But now here's where it gets tricky. You're going to say, Anna, well, before you get the recipes maybe from, I don't know, newspapers and magazines, we used to tear them and put them in binders, those of you who know those days. But now you have recipes that are in video format, like YouTube, TikTok, What do I do with the different types of media? And this is where tools like Notion or Raindrop.io come into place. I've been using Raindrop.io. Actually, it's been fantastic. And I can show it to you, in another workshop. any tool that's a bookmarking tool that you can bookmark kind of anything. Now with Notion or Coda, you can build your own. And I'm sure Michael has a lot of content in the Lifebook library that you can reference. But you can also use any bookmarking system to put them all in one place. Because the problem for me, when I started thinking of my resource libraries, was I stepped back and I looked. I have so many of them. I save recipes in Instagram collections. I have a collection in Instagram called recipes. I have a playlist in YouTube called recipes. I have a Pinterest board called recipes. And I'm like, where am I going to look? How much am I going to look? It's too much, right? So one of the other principles I used, I said, okay, essentialism, right? Be an essentialist. So do I need too many recipes? Like a lot of recipes really look good, but most of them, like today I was going through one of my libraries and I realized I have, at least the ones I can encounter today, more than 12 recipes for chicken in a pan. It's basically chicken and potatoes, but with different sauces. And like, I don't need to save all those recipes, you know? And I'm sure that I have a good palate, so I never look at the recipe in full. I always kind of create something on my own eventually with the spices. But what I'm saying is make sure that it's like, let me give you another example. It's like you have a wardrobe full of clothes, but you end up wearing the same clothes, right? It's the same with the recipes. You'll have 200 recipes, but you realize that you're cooking the same meals over and over again. So choose what are your top favorite ingredients, like what do you want to eat, and build your book on that. I had a rule at some point where I was like, rice on Monday, bulgur on Tuesday, chicken on Thursday, you know, and pasta and salads and so on. It made it easier for me. And I had just like libraries, like, okay, salads today, go to the salads part. So there are different ways you can organize these. But the most important, again, are the principles. The same goes for, take another example from areas of commitment, again, in health and fitness, because these are mostly resources we use, exercises, exercise routines. What I've done here is I asked, okay, I want to learn a few new exercises, but first of all, I have exercises that I do, and they work well. So don't change what works. This is rule number one. Don't change what works. So even with your systems, with your libraries, if it's working, if you have a system of storing content and then accessing it, you have a system for it, don't change it. If it's not working, that's where we change, right? So for exercises, I realized that I don't have any upper body exercises. You know, like my hands are weak, my arms are weak, my back is weak. So what I did, because I exercise right there, I have my mat ready on the floor, my dumbbells are there, and my TV is here, right in front of me. I decided, okay, I want to make this effortless, right? Remove the friction. So if the TV is in front of me, and it's a smart TV, so I have YouTube on it, I'm going to create a playlist with some exercises. I found a channel where they have follow along exercises. So I'm like, okay, this is great. I can follow along. They have the timer. I don't need a timer as well. Removing friction again. And I chose only 6 exercises. One for Monday, one for Tuesday, one for... I said, I'm going to try them out for a few weeks and see which ones I like, which ones I can do with my, you know, weak arms right now, and strengthen them gradually. And then what happens is you don't need to do the entire routine over and over again. At some point you'll learn. This is where with the sacred choices, at some point you learn and you don't even need that resource anymore. And this is where also we want to be mindful of creating resources that are low maintenance. That's where if you're an essentialist, if it's not too many content, you can revise it periodically and change things. So if something's not working, you can remove it. If you something you learned, you can remove it. If you don't need it again, you can remove it. Or you can include something new. Let's say I have learned all these routines and now I want to learn a bunch of new stuff. I remove those, I add new ones so that it doesn't become distracting. So this is kind of how I think of resources. The first one is the principles of why am I gathering them? and where I'm gathering them. And the where is basically, where do I need them? Like, the example I always give is, you need toilet paper when you're on the toilet seat. The toilet paper should not be down the closet, down the hole, or at the supermarket, right? It's the same with your resources. Think of cooking, right? In the kitchen. When you're cooking, you want everything to be in the kitchen. Everything is not in the same place. There are items in the freezer, items in the fridge, items on the counter, maybe items in a food cupboard, but they are right there in the kitchen. So think of resources the same way. It doesn't mean that if you have a project, let's say an area of focus, one of your goals, your overriding goal, you might have content, digital content. You might have physical books. You might have notebooks. It's fine, but know where they are and know how, if they are easily accessible to you. So let's say if you work on the go, you travel a lot, you don't want to have books and notebooks, too many of them, because you have to carry them all with you everywhere, right? So trying to find resources that you can carry with you. The important thing is just make sure that they are organized in a way that you are never asking yourself, I'm 100% sure I saved it. That means that you don't have a system. This is where you need to revise the system and create a system that works. So anytime you're confused, it means you have too many places where you store information and too many of them. So another area we talked about last week was areas of focus, as I said, which are your projects. Now, for these, you might have resources that you will use temporarily for the project, and then you will not need them. But in most cases, at the end of a project, you have things you want to keep and reuse again. So you also want to differentiate between those two, okay? Then we have areas of interest. It's fine, definitely fine to have areas of interest and hobbies. So you might want to maybe buy a coloring book. It's totally fine if you have the time for it, right? Like, don't buy a million things that you're interested in, and then you feel frustrated when you see them. Maybe sometimes I've been guilty of this. I keep some of these on my coffee table, thinking, oh, if I see the book enough, I might start reading it. But it actually frustrates me every single time. So that's where another principle of mine is, I'm not buying something I don't have time for. So that's another one of my principles. For areas of expression, this is a funny one. So resources aren't always content we consume. They're just also the tools. So for areas of expression, which is if you're writing, if you're journaling, if you're a creative person, and you have all these tools, I'm guilty of having a box of canvases, paintbrushes, empty, beautiful notebooks, colorful pens, because I'm like, I'm going to write that book. I'm going to create a scrapbook. I need all of these. I buy them, but I don't have the time to do them. That was the old me. Obviously, I haven't done this for years now because of my principles. So I'm like, Anna, you really want to paint. Maybe one day, but now you have no time. You have no patience, and you don't even know how to paint. You're going to have to also learn. Definitely no time. So principles are really important. Let's go back to that. Why do I need this? Like, first of all, what do I need, right? Let's go back to the basics that we talked about last week. What is your knowledge gap? What do you need? If you are studying a specific topic for years now, I'm sure you know a lot. But what happens is, because you're passionate, you might say, oh my God, there's a new book on this topic. I'm going to buy it. I want you to ask, do I really need this? Read reviews, read the summary of the book, ask about it, and see if you actually need that entire book and why. Is it supporting any of your goals? Is it supporting any of your sacred choices? Unless you're writing a book or a thesis or doing some research and you need a lot of books, then maybe. But also, again, when does the research end? When do you actually publish that book, right? So what do I need for this specific period of my life. How is it going to support my goals, as I said? And how is it going to support my life vision? And then also, how is it going to support my quality of life, as we said, because we want to include areas of interest in there as well. So that's another one to keep in mind. Now, once you have guidelines and principles, you can start gathering these resources. And every time you're gathering something, you're asking those questions, right? You're repeating your principles. And that's how you know you're sure that you want to acquire this piece of content or resource. Now, you take it. Where do you put it? This is where we want to create those libraries and those systems. We need to choose the tools where we want to store them. And when it comes to the choosing, we were essentialists. Now, when it comes to storing, we need to be think of it as effortless. Again, bringing the books by Greg McGowan, because really great principles. Effortless means we want to make things easy, less friction, easily accessible wherever we are, right? And also make any activities fun. So we need to make sure we eliminate the friction. As I said, like I use the TV because it is available to me when I'm exercising. So I use that as a resource, but you have to choose, okay, where do I need this? And put it right there, right? Just like toilet paper example, just like the kitchen utensils. You put them where you need them, because if it's not there, you already created friction. And guess what? I'm going to remind you of this probably every workshop. We are lazy creatures. We only take action if it's needed, right? So if this resistance is already in us, we don't want to create more friction. We want to make sure that that friction is removed as much as possible. Keep the cookbook in the kitchen. Keep your exercise videos wherever you exercise. If you need them on the go, like even the tools, not just resources in terms of books and videos. Like, for example, I didn't use dumbbells for a while. I used those resistant bands just because I was traveling a lot and I needed something I can carry with me. So it wasn't an excuse not to exercise elsewhere, right? I was like, there are dumbbells if there's a gym at the hotel, but if not, I still have my resistant bands. I can do exercises in my hotel room. But now that I'm settled here, I'm not thinking of traveling too much, and I need to build more upper body strength. I got dumbbells. Like after a lot of thought, oh my God, you need to know how much I think and how many questions I ask before I buy anything. But it's saved me a lot of time, and really and honestly, it's less cluttered in my small apartment. So again, with the principles, less friction. Where do you need this resource? Put it there. Don't keep it on the counters though. Like don't put everything in front of you, because that's going to overwhelm you as well. And this is where the last piece comes in, which is systems. Everything is a system. If you haven't read the book Work the System by Sam Carpenter, go grab it now. Like I think if I had to choose a book that we studied this entire month, it should be that book. Maybe next year. Read Work the System. Really powerful mind shifting book. It all starts with basically what I'm talking about the mindset shift, about the approach to things. But the systems are really important. And I want to read a quote by James Clear. Probably most of you know this. He says, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems, right? He says, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. This is from Atomic Habits by James Clear. And what does he mean? It means I have a wonderful library. I have all the books I need to succeed in my business, to be fit. I have all the videos. I have everything. But I never use them because I don't have a system. I'm like, I wake up, I rush to work, I do this, I do that. The weeks go by. I don't have a system. It's not on my calendar. What's the use of it? I wasted a lot of time creating that library, but I don't have a system to use it, right? Just like the phone, because we don't have a system, the photos are gathered on the phone, on our phones, just because we don't have a system. The system is the most important thing. The system says, what am I doing? When am I doing this? And how am I doing this? And it becomes, for me, it becomes a ritual. And when it becomes a ritual, I enjoy every step of the system. It's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, right? You enjoy it. And because we made it effortless, because we put it where we need it, because there's no friction, and because we have only the right resources, and we're following the system, it becomes kind of a ritual, right? Like, so let's say exercises. Okay, let's take another sacred choice, something you want to do daily, right? So how do you make it effortless, and how do you have all these resources? One of the other rules is, with sacred choices specifically, I want to mention this, is we tend to tell ourselves we don't know enough, and we keep using that time that we allocate for actually exercising or cooking to doing research. You're like, I need to do meal prep for next week, but I think I don't know enough. Let me research this this Sunday, and next Sunday I'll do meal prep. Next Sunday comes and you're like, I don't like that meal plan. I'm going to watch another video. And the rule is, if it's a weekly task, do it a day before. Do the research a day before. So if you want to meal prep every Sunday, do the research on Saturday, so you meal prep on Sunday. If your routine is daily, like exercises, do what you already do every day and say, only on Saturdays I do research. And I research like one additional exercise. I try it. If I like it, I add it to my system. Never stop a system that's working. Never cancel it. Just stop and start something new. I did this, and it was a big, big mistake. I had a system that was working really well for my managing my tasks, my to-do list. And then I discovered a new app, and I loved it the first day, which was very wrong. You should try it out for a while. And I decided to move my entire system to that the next day. What happened is my entire system crashed because I just moved immediately. So this is why it's important to do things gradually. Test the ground, test the waters. So again, with the resources as well, always ask yourself, like, do I actually need anything external? Again, the internet is a great tool, but it's also kind of stealing our time and attention and money, because we think that we don't know enough, and we don't know everything. But if your system is working, and I learned this from my sister, she rarely updates her devices or like tools. And I ask her, like, why? There are really amazing tools out there now. She's like, my system's working. Why would I change it? And it's like, yeah, exactly. Why would I change it? Don't go for the bells and whistles. Don't go for the book because everyone's reading it. The courses, oh my God, like the courses, online courses, right? Really. And sometimes we pay a lot of money too. It's not just free. But do we really need them? When and how? Like, do I have the time? I have a list of questions that I use, and I can share them right now with you, for courses that I've used in the past, and it has helped me become an essentialist. With courses, especially those that promise, live calls and Q&A sessions, one of the questions I ask is, okay, what's the actual content, right, of the course? Because I've taken some courses and I found most of that content is already available free on their YouTube channels. They just put them together and put a price on it. The only advantage they sell with it, they say, is the live calls. Second question, what time are the live calls? Probably they're 2 a.m. my time, and I'm not going to be able to attend them. And guess what? I know myself. I'm not going to watch an entire recording of a 90-minute long just Q&A. It's not even a workshop. It's not a lesson. It's a Q&A. And I don't know what to expect. I'm not going to watch it again. So all of these I'm like a very, very harsh, it's like not worth it. Done. I'm done. Not worth it. Right. So it depends on also your goals, and like why you want to take this course, and how many courses did you take before this one. And I would say just sit with yourself and ask yourself, when is it enough? When will I feel like I know enough to take the next step? And we discussed this in previous workshops, that learning shouldn't stop us from taking action. Actually, we should start with the action list. Write the action list and start taking action. The moment you can't take an action, the moment you look at that list and you see, this I cannot do. For some reason, it intimidates me. What is it? Dig deeper. That's where you'll find, I don't have enough information to make, to take the step or to make a decision here. That's when you identified a knowledge gap, or sometimes a skill gap, and they are different, okay? This is when you're going to need a resource. And this is where you ask, what kind of resource do I need? Can one blog post help? Can actually, maybe I just need something I can just call Michael and say, hey, Michael, I just need you to answer this simple question, and that's it. Or maybe we can have a discussion, and that's it, right? It can be a person, it can be you, it can be anything out there. It doesn't have to be an entire course. It doesn't have to be you going to a university or buying a bunch of books. And this is where we always go to, creating this resource library or toolbox before we take action. It's the same with anything. Again, let's go back to the exercises. You get excited. I did my life book. I have sacred choices. I'm going to exercise. You go buy the shoes, you go buy the mat, you go buy the dumbbells, and then you don't do anything about it, right? So get started first. Get started first. And then like with the bare minimum, like what the first thing I need to start with this exercise, to start with this. So these are all important before we create those libraries, before we optimize them. Okay. So let's do a quick kind of recap of what. So first, let me give you a list of questions you can ask to build these libraries, and then we can do a recap of what we talked about. So the first thing I want to do is, this is your homework. Okay, the first thing I want you to do is list all the libraries that you already have. Okay, what libraries you have. And let me give you examples of what I mean by libraries again. If you have a physical library, what do you have in them as well? So column 1, library, column 2, content. Let's say I'm looking at my library. I have books, notebooks, an agenda, kind of like a planner thing. That's it. The second, another type of library would be YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok. I don't know, wherever you save things, like wherever they have this option of saving content. Pinterest, those are libraries. Maybe you have Notion, maybe you have Coda, maybe you have multiple different documents in Notion and Coda that you use as different libraries. If you have a Mac, you have the Books app, maybe you have PDFs in there. That's a library. You have folders, Google Drive, OneDrive, iCloud. Those are libraries of resources. And then you have your note-taking apps too. Don't forget that, because that's a library of quotes and insights and whatever information you've gathered. And then we have another type of content library that's more of it's not a place where you save things, rather a place where you go to choose things. What I mean is like Lifebook, Mind Valley, Masterclass. These are like Netflix, right? Like they have a library of content for you. You pay them a subscription and you can access whatever you need while you're paying them. So in those libraries, you have content that you haven't accessed yet, content that you have consumed and content that you are still consuming or you've saved so you can consume. So these are also libraries. And we tend to forget that. Like, it's really funny if you don't put them in one place. Like I have now a space in, again, as I said, I use raindrop.io. It's called library, content libraries, where I have these as like boxes. I can see them as cards. So I can remember, oh, if I need a course, why am I paying these subscriptions that I'm going and looking for courses and videos elsewhere? I already pay these people, you know, like there's a huge library of resources in the Lifebook app, but we forget about it. But if you have a list of that, if you have that as a kind of a resource library on its own, then the first place you go and look for things should be those places where you are actually investing money every month or every year. So these are all your libraries. Write them down, and then in front of them, write what content you have in there, right? For Mindvalley, you have the quest, and they have actually other types of content there. In Lifebook, you have posts, you have recordings of workshops, you have a lot of resources. Masterclass, you have resources. Just write them down. Write what, you know, if you're paying for them or they're free. So I have also free libraries and paid libraries listed as well. And that's the first part of your homework. The second part is for the libraries where you save content, I want you to write third column. How often do you save content in them? How often do you use them? For example, I have Pinterest. I haven't used it for years now, so probably should close that one. So it's really a good thing to do, to look at and say, how often do I use this? And then for the ones that are not where you save things like Lifebook and Mindvalley, I would ask, how often do I reference them? Like, do I even remember that I have these resources? Like Audible, oh my gosh. Things we pay for and forget to use. And then in front of that, like, also, right, do you have a system for them? Like if you use them, do you have a system, like, or principles and guidelines? Like when do you save in Notion? When do you save in, if you use Remarkable, what kind of notes do you write in Remarkable? Like write those down, okay? This will give you clarity of kind of how you organize resources and information and all those things and how you use them. And it's really powerful because you realize that there are tools you don't use anymore. And there are tools you're paying for and you're not using anymore, and you can make decisions based off of that. So in order to optimize our libraries, one of the things this table is going to tell you is, well, if I haven't used Pinterest for a long time, and here, detach your emotions here, because the moment you start, go back to Pinterest and see, oh, I had so many awesome things saved here. Maybe I should keep this. It's fine if you keep it. If you don't look at it, it's fine. I don't mind. At some point, I had this pet peeve of creating cyber waste. So I had to delete everything in my account, which I would suggest we do. But still, don't make a big kind of like fuss about it. And one of the first things I would say to do in this kind of pursuit of optimizing your resources, create a space in any of these tools, a temporary space. So for example, sometimes I see a resource and I want to be an essentialist. Like I really know that I probably don't need this, but I don't want to let go of it with ease. You know, it's like, I really want to save this. I put it in that temporary space because I know that months later, I will just go inside, select all, delete, right? But at that moment, if you can't let go of it, that attachment, don't put it in the space you have for the essential things. Okay, put it elsewhere. Maybe you call it the same thing. Like I have, let's say, a coaching library and I have coaching temp library. Just put it in the temporary library if you can't let go, if you can't be an essentialist. Because again, remember the example with the passport and the newsletters. It really becomes harder. The moment you clutter your library. You don't want to have a big library. Remember that. The goal is not to have a big library of resources. The goal is to have actually less is better, less is more. Less, but the best, okay? What you actually need. So with that in mind, just be an essentialist, and if you can't let go, put it in that archive or temp folder. Then I want you to also ask, where do you save similar content? So if you look at that column where you wrote what kind of content you save in Pinterest, what kind of content you save in Instagram, and so on, they might be different things. And as I said, it's okay to have multiple places to save things because, hey, your food doesn't go all in the freezer. Some go to the freezer, some go in the fridge, some go on the counter, some go in a food cupboard, but you know where they are. You need a system like that, where you don't ask, where do I put, I don't know, the bananas? You know where they go. You want a system, similar system to the type of content you have. So when you write this table, you actually kind of discover what kind of content you want to keep and have, and then you can decide where to put them. And here, I'm not talking about videos and books. I'm talking about the actual category of content, let's say. So one example I want to give is when I was taking my coaching course, I realized what I was doing was I was also watching videos and reading books on the same topic. And because my mind was kind of in that space, I was saving posts on Instagram related to coaching. And at some point, it became like I had content everywhere related to coaching. But when I needed the information, I didn't know where to go. I was like, where was it? I remember I read this thing or watched this video, but where was it? So that's where I kind of did the research and found raindrop.io, which is a bookmarking system, a bookmarking tool. And I realized, okay, now I need a new system. Every time I see an Instagram post, instead of hitting save and choosing a collection, I'm going to hit share and share it into my raindrop collection for that thing. And then what I can do is I can use tags. So basically what I did was I have a collection of quotes, and then I have tags, for example, coaching. I have a collection of, what do I call them? Cards. I call them cards, but they're more like, I wouldn't say principle, like steps. Like for coaching, they give you these models, there are different coaching models. So I save them in my coaching cards collection, and I tag them with coaching again. So what happens is, if I see a Mind Valley course on coaching, if I see any posts in Lifebook as coaching, I save those links. And even if they are saved in different collections, like courses go in courses, books go in books, again, this is my system. You can organize it the other way around. You can put a collection called coaching, and then use tags called books and videos, whatever. But the way I do it is I put them all in there. But then if I'm looking for any resources I have on coaching, I just search for coaching, and I can see a list of, hey, you have all these books on coaching, you have all these videos on coaching or courses on coaching. They all appear on one page, even if they are not links. So for example, I have physical books. I get the picture of the cover of the book from Google, put it in my library, and write a note instead of a link that this is in my actual physical library, right? So I know what I have. Obviously, this is like a huge thing, and you don't need to organize things this much. But if you do consume a lot of content, and if you pay money for a lot of content like this, you're invested in your intellectual life, you would want to do this, okay? But it's not a must. Again, don't organize for the sake of organizing. It's a waste of time. If it's not causing you any problems, I would say don't do it, okay? But having a place for everything and putting everything in its place really helps us with the frustration, helps us with saving money, saving time, and finding what we need when we need it and where we need it, okay? So basically, that's what I want to cover today. So a quick recap would be get clarity, do this exercise, do the homework, get clarity of what resources, libraries you have, what resources you put in there, if you have a system for them or not, create principles for gathering the content and be an essentialist, and use the rules of effortless to create those libraries and put them where you need them, and so that there's no friction to accessing them when you need them. Okay. And then last but not least, the most important, again, is the systems. Make sure your system works from A to Z. Okay. And last example I want to give is also something general as well, which is a resource too for financial life. If you gather receipts and you want to log your expenses, do it in the moment. The moment you make the payment, have an app for a financial app on your phone. It's really a game changer, a lifesaver, because I dreaded doing finances if I had to look at receipts over and over and over again. And it's like, it takes a lot of time and energy, because you get these receipts. Some receipts, some companies put the date at the bottom, some put it at the top, and it's like, it's a mess. If you're going to do paperwork like that, it's going to be frustrating. To save time for the future, again, with the photo example, to save time, not to have any projects called decluttering in the future, do it in the moment. It takes less than a minute. You just write it in the app and take a screenshot of take a picture of the receipt, and just, it's there. You put the category, it's there. If you actually need the receipts, another helpful tip I learned is carry a highlighter with you. Just in the moment, highlight the date and the amount and whatever is important on that. So if you ever need to revisit those receipts in the future, again, you're not reading the entire thing. You're not scanning it to find where the date is. You have that information. So these are really small and important things we can do. This is a system, right? Like, these are systems we can create to optimize our way of gathering those resources and storing those resources and accessing them. Thank you. Any questions or feedback? The ground is yours. Nothing? Hey, okay, Charmaine, go ahead.
Okay. Anna, I missed the first 20 minutes. I was in a meeting and I had hoped I got out at 10, but I want to ask you, I'm a note taker. I'm not great at creating systems online, but I'm a great note taker. I always have been. I really connect with my notes. When I write it down, I tend to remember it more. So that would be a huge transformation for me. And I have binders, like I have my Lightbook binder, my Mastery binder. And when I'm on the phone with a client, I can access that information like instantly. When you talk about having it available in your space, but having only what you need in your space. So my system is binders, and my system is, and I have the same system with my receipts and my financials. So I use that system for almost everything. However, am I being, as you put it, am I being an essentialist with these binders, with these folders, rather than me resisting putting it online? I write things down, and I treasure my notes because I can access them like that. No delay, live when I'm with a client.
Yeah, your system works. Who said you need to put them online? No, your binders are amazing. If it works for you, it works for you. Don't change a thing. Darling, don't change a thing, please. Okay. I don't want you to come and say, Anna, I listened to you. No, no, don't change a thing. If you feel like you need access to them online at any point, consider that option at that point. But now, if it's working for you, yeah, and you can access it like that, you're an essentialist.
Instant.
You have an effortless system. You're saying I can access it like that. That's
Yes,
an
I'm
effortless
looking at my
system.
two Lifebook binders. They're all in order. All my notes are in there with each category. And I just love and I do everything in color. Like I use color because thank you. You gave me permission to keep my notes.
You
It's
don't need
worked out.
permission, darling. You know, I am so happy to see your passion. You're passionate about the way you do things, and you have a
Yeah.
system. You have the binders, you're using the colors, you're passionate about it. Your system works. Don't change it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Anna. That was
You're most welcome.
fantastic.
You're welcome. Anyone else? I think I saw a question. Kate, did I answer your question by sending those the questions? Awesome. Okay. And look at the gallery again because I'm missing hands here. Okay, anyone else? Any feedback, any comments, any questions?
I wanted to ask a question if it's okay.
Yes, of course.
I want to say that I have a lot of clutter around my, how do you say, my library of codes and stuff, and seems overwhelming to start to order it now. How do I find the motivation to start?
Yes, that's the question. that is that is the problem. Like I wish all of us were like Charmaine and we had a system that was working. I'm in a similar place as you with some part of my notes. So it's okay. First of all, know that it's okay. You didn't know about systems before. And one of the other things I want to mention here is be graceful towards yourself because it's hard to change systems. Because even if you go through what you have right now and organize it, if you don't change the system, you're going to fall back to the way your systems work, right? Like James Clear said, you're going to fall to the level of your systems. So you want to start working with the system. So what I do is I always like to start with a blank page. Do the activities I mentioned today, okay? So just list what are these resources. Like you said, you have a lot of quotes and first ask what's the problem with having all those quotes and what is their use? Like ask all these questions to identify why you've already gathered these. What's their purpose? Do you have like where do you store them? If I can ask, what tool are you using to store these?
Well, I store them on YouTube, on Facebook, on the computer, and on the Google Chrome links.
Okay. So what are they usually about? Like, are there different things or are they related to work or like a specific project or interest?
Yes, they are all different things, like for spirituality, then for recipes for food, things about the computer, programming and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's all different things.
Anna, can I address that a little bit?
Yes, sure, Michael, go ahead.
So a lot of the stuff that Anna's talking about is something called the PARA method, which is projects, areas, resources, and the fourth one is archive. So when you have a whole lot of stuff, a lot of what they talk about is put everything you already have in the archive and then start your system from the blank page that Anna was talking about. Is decide what your projects are, which is your goals, what the areas are, which is our categories in Lifebook. And then your resources is all the things we're talking about here that she's talking about organizing, the books, the videos, the recipes, etc. But so we don't get to that place of overwhelm, put everything in the archive. You have it in places, but then you start your system fresh to be able to move through it, and then your system becomes easier. If you need something from the archive, you go get it, but otherwise you leave it there, because otherwise it can be overwhelming trying to organize all that stuff at once. It's not effortless. There's a whole lot of friction there. So that's really the place that I would recommend starting, is consider that that's over there in my archive. I haven't gotten rid of it. I haven't deleted it. So it's available if I need to go get it. But start your system once you've determined what you want to use, and then move forward.
Yes, thank you. I already started using Notion, and I started a new archive there.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. That was the best summary of it all. Yes. Again, like we said earlier, like temporary folder or an archive, that's it. You don't need to delete anything. And then when you start fresh, what you can do actually is, there's a reason you save those things. There's a reason, because you like them, because you thought that you could use them. So when you start fresh, when you're going to start adding content to your library, instead of going to Google and YouTube, go to your actual YouTube playlist where you have these content and be an essentialist from there. So you're looking at one thing at a time, right? Like, let's say if you're building your recipes portfolio or recipes library, right? Instead of going back to any online resource, say, okay, I remember I saved some TikTok videos. Let me just go and see if I can salvage those. And based on that, you can just save some of them to the new library. And then if you don't want the rest, you can delete them from the archive. But you don't need to look at the archive, as Michael said as well. So it's up to you what you want to do with that. So, but the best way, again, to actually do something and get started is the blank page. If you try to look at what you already have, you're just going to spend hours and days and months and not start on this project at all. Okay. And I know you will say, but I know I have good content in there, especially if it's personal notes, not things you saved that you want to go back to. If it's in the same system, it's searchable. Don't forget that. So just put it in the archive. And then at least you don't ask yourself, where was it again? It's in that one space, even if it's a link to that resource, right? Like when we're doing this activity with the table where I said, list your resources, at least you'll know, I have these resources. So maybe it's here, maybe it's here, maybe it's here. And then you can at least know where to look for that information, if it was something you saved personally, And in the next session, actually, I'm going to have Tim with me. We're going to talk more about information management and the difference between information and insights. And we're going to talk more about this, specifically of how to choose what to save when it comes to note-taking and our own insights, because that's where it becomes more cluttered, and that's more, we find those things more valuable. It's kind of like the nuggets from the newsletters again, like, do I just copy paste information from everywhere, or do I write my insights and so on? So we'll discuss that next week.
Fantastic. Anna?
Yes, Charmaine.
May I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a box of paper that, I could have had just a conversation with somebody and I took the nuggets and there was not a binder for it. I'd have to create a nugget binder. Right? And so my thought is, rather than sifting through each page and touching it once and putting it where it needs to go, I was thinking of just recycling it all. It's been there for years and I'm not using it. So in your principle of being an essentialist, it's probably best for me to just recycle it.
Yes. I'm proud of you. Yes, okay. I'm proud of you. If you can make that decision, you are really strong, and you know, because here's another thing very important that I forgot maybe to mention. Hopefully I'll remember to mention next week, is information is changing super fast these days.
Yes.
What you have in those boxes might not be even relevant these days.
Yes.
It's not worth your energy and effort to go through them. There's new
Yes.
information out there nowadays. So
Yes.
throw
That's
them,
very true.
start
Yep.
fresh. Start with that
Fantastic.
concept as well. Like if you feel like you need this for a long time, put it in a different place than the ones you don't need. Like I'm going to give you another example of like really simple things. Contact numbers. We end up saving all contact numbers in our phone, and then it becomes cluttered. So what I do is, if I need a contact number, if I'm given a contact number for a specific project, I put it in my project notes. I don't put it in my phone.
Okay.
And when I'm done with it, it gets lost with the notes. I don't need it anymore. But if I need this, like if it's like my building security, it's in my phone, obviously, you know. So it's very important to differentiate between them, and not just, oh my God, I know a lot of people who just save the number without a name. Don't ever do that. Write as much information as you can with the phone numbers, or anything you save. But also, the reason I'm saying put the numbers in the project or with the notes where you need them instead of your phone is because I don't want you to create a million systems. But if you know how to create systems, you can save it in your phone. You have a system for it, and you'll delete it at the end of the project, or you delete it. But the problem is we don't put those systems in. We don't do the cleanup, which is the final stage of any project. We don't close the loops. That's where we end up with clutter. When you're done with any client, any project, look at those notes, sift through them. Things go in the archive, things go in recycling, things go in a binder where like, this is a case study, you know? You need to separate them in the moment because it's still fresh in your head. If you don't do it then, darling, 1 year later, please throw it. It's going to be a burden and not a nugget or not anything useful. Do it in the moment while it's still fresh in your head. And that's kind of how you build these systems.
Okay, fantastic. That was great, Anna. I really, really connected. It really anchored in the being an essentialist. So that is really great.
Thank you. And thanks, Michael, for participating. I always look forward for Michael being here because I know he's got great insights, and we always talk about very similar topics. And if you need any kind of help, if you want to use Notion, Michael's your guy. Kevin, nice to see you as well. Yeah, if you have no more questions, we can end the session today. And remember to do your homework and join me next week when we actually talk about more in details about information and insight management.
Yes.
And we continue this topic.
Yes. I scheduled all of your sessions in my calendar right at the beginning. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Charmaine.
Okay. Have a wonderful.
You too, everyone. Bye.
Bye.